Ralston steeled himself for the night ahead. He was hungry and thirsty, but he knew that he had to preserve the little food and water that he had. In the hours to come, he would allow himself only a few small bites and sips. As the sun continued to drop, so did the temperature. He was dressed in only a t-shirt and shorts. His warmer clothes were back in his truck. At nightfall, the canyon was pitch black and eerily quiet. The temperature had fallen from the high 60s down to 50 degrees. The only way to stay warm was to keep active. As the night wore on, he continued to chisel away at the rock, using his headlamp for light.
I spent most of the first night doing it, and then I realized that it would probably take me 150 hours to remove enough rock to where it would even be possible to move my hand. And I didn't have that kind of time available, nor did my left hand hold up very well to the task of just bashing it into the rock. I was scraping my knuckles up, my hand was swollen from when it had been smashed. From that point on, I didn't have the energy, and I knew this was going to be a much longer haul.
Ralston was already exhausted, but sleep was not an option. He was trapped in a standing position, no way to take the pressure off his legs. So he focused on staying warm, still chipping at the rock by the light of his headlamp, as best he could. As night one in Blue John Canyon stretched on endlessly. Aron Ralston had made it through his first night in Blue John. He'd spent most of it chiseling away at the boulder with his knife, but with the dawn came the sobering reality that chipping away enough rock to free himself was an impossible task. He had now been trapped for 16 hours. It was starting to sink in that his best chance of survival was also his most dreaded option, cutting off his own arm. It was his last resort, a decision he was still a long way from making. When the sun came up that first day, were you in greater despair, or did you have a feeling that new day, new hope?
Having made it through the night felt good. I knew I could make it through another night if I needed to. It also gave birth to a hope that, well, it's Sunday. It's a day on the weekend. Maybe some other canyoneers might be coming down. And
did you do any shouting, help?
Once. And I limited myself to one shout a day, but I didn't like the sound of my voice. It sounded panicked. It sounded scared. I knew from experience that you can't hear more than 50 yards either way down a canyon.
By now, Ralston realized that his crushed arm was beyond repair. The pain had somewhat subsided, signaling that the tissue and nerve endings in his lower arm were probably dead. But he was still tremendously uncomfortable, trapped in a standing position. He took advantage of his training as an engineer to rig a system with his rope and climbing harness that allowed him to sit, taking the weight off his legs.
Essentially, the way that I would try to rest would be to get into this position, right like I am. I'd hold onto my shoulder with my left arm, and sitting, taking the weight off my legs, I'd get in here and kind of just tuck my head into my arm like this. I would only be able to do that for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and then I'd get so cold that my body would start shuddering, shivering, and shaking, trying to generate heat. And then I would have to start doing something, either insulating myself better or going back to work, chipping at the rock, or working on the webbing or something.
Determined to keep his wits about him, he continued to work through the possible solutions. Ralston used the same ropes and climbing gear to devise a pulley system to try to shift the boulder, but still, it would not budge. His arm remained solidly pinned beneath it. By Sunday afternoon, 24 hours had passed. Ralston had worn down both blades and the file on his pocket knife, hammering away at that rock, and the pulley system that he rigged up, hoping he could move the boulder some, had not worked, so now he reevaluated his few remaining options. He continued to hold out hope that he might be found, but as the remaining hours of weekend daylight faded, so too did that possibility. It was unlikely that there would be other hikers in the area until the following weekend, and Ralston knew he wouldn't survive that long. Rescue also seemed unlikely. Ralston was not even expected back at work until Tuesday. No one would realize that he was missing for days, and even then, he had told no one where he was headed.
3:05 on Sunday. This marks my 24-hour mark of being stuck.
It was at this point Sunday afternoon that Aron Ralston, realizing his slim chances of survival, picked up his video camera and began recording messages that he hoped would be found after his death.
My name's Aron Ralston. My parents are Donna and Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
Ralston would continue to record these video messages for the next 4 days, but he asked us that we broadcast the audio portions only. The video, he says, is simply too upsetting for his family and friends to see.
Been putting a lot of effort into staying warm. I have very, very little water. My body's having difficulty controlling its temperature. I'm in deep stuff.
More and more, Ralston wondered if that dreaded last resort of cutting off his own arm was his only hope of getting out alive.
And it was something I wasn't psychologically prepared to think very hard about at that point, but I laid things out trying to brainstorm what I was going to use, how I could use it to operate on myself, what I could use for a tourniquet, what I could use for padding, what I could use for a splint, things like that.
But actually going through with it, well, that was something else. For now, it seemed that cutting off his arm was just another trail that would lead to certain death.
It's pretty much suicide. It's 4 hours from here to my vehicle. Climbing would probably be impossible with one hand. The blood loss and my dehydration, I think, are ruling that out. I think I would die if I cut my arm.
Once again, Ralston pushed that thought away, instead focusing on rationing his remaining food and water even further in order to survive. With only 10 ounces of water left, he now limited himself to one very small sip every hour and a half. He also took pains to conserve his 2 burritos, taking one small bite at a time. But as Sunday afternoon slipped into Sunday night, even those small bites and sips were a luxury he couldn't afford.
I would allow myself to open up my water bottle. I would hold it up to my lips and tilt it just enough until I could feel the inside of my lip get wet, and then I would make myself put it down.
Ralston was an experienced search and rescue volunteer and well aware of the grim survival statistics. Without water, he'd likely die within 3 days. He was already feeling symptoms of extreme dehydration.
My body wasn't operating properly. Even during the day, I would have hot flashes and cold flashes. Without water, my body's temperature regulation was just out the window.
At night, it was even worse.
Even with a slight breeze, I would just shudder uncontrollably from just the early stages of hypothermia. I wrapped my legs up in the rope that I had and put webbing around my neck to keep my neck warm, had my hat pulled down, put my CD Walkman headphones on my ears to keep my ears warm. 9 hours of just total darkness, cloudless skies, and the stars sucking the warmth out of me. The hours, especially from 3 to 6 in the morning, would go very, very slowly. I would think that I'd been passing as much as 10 to 15 minutes of time and look at my watch again, and it had been 3 minutes since the last time I looked at my watch. And it would go.
You look at your watch a lot?
Yeah, that would be almost all the activity that I would do during those last hours in the morning when it was the coldest, and it felt darker.
With nothing to do but think, Ralston had plenty of time to question his own judgment, the choices that he'd made, and how he'd gotten into this predicament in the first place.
I don't know what it is about me. It's brought me to this, but I go out looking for adventure and risk so I can feel alive. I don't tell someone where I'm going. It's just dumb.
Monday morning, Ralston had made it through his second night, but he still hadn't slept, and now sleep deprivation was taking its own toll.
I would kind of drift off into these trances that would lead me through a surreal escape from the canyon, and all of a sudden be in someone's living room or in a hallway that would lead into a cocktail party, or that we would... I mean, one time I ended up in a hospital janitor's closet. I have very little understanding of really what those were all meant to convey, but in some concrete way they actually helped me by giving me something to look forward to, even to bolster my strength, to feel like I was not as alone and connected.
What about food and drink? Think about that a lot?
Yeah. I fantasized about the beverages. I can't stop thinking about how good grapefruit juice, or a margarita, or an OJ, or a popsicle. All these great things that I would love to have. An orange. Oh, the tangerine. I can't think about that stuff.
The cruel reality was far different. By Monday night, he was down to only a few bites of food and a sip of water. His desperate situation called for desperate measures.
Monday night, I started saving my urine because I knew that that was at least going to need to be an option, if nothing else.
As Ralston hunkered down for his third night in the canyon, his situation was even more bleak, and it was about to get worse.
God, I'm really screwed. I'm going to shrivel up right here over the course of the next few days.
He was now convinced his only chance to live would require him to do something unimaginable.
There was a raven that flew overhead, and it came each day.
The flight of the raven was now part of Ralston's morning routine. It was the only sign of life that he had seen in almost 4 days.
With the accuracy and timeliness of a Swiss train, that every morning at 8:15 it was overhead flying up canyon. It kind of became my morning ritual to watch for it and to see it go.
The spiritual significance of the raven was not lost on Aron. In mythology, the raven is a dark symbol thought to foreshadow death or carry the soul to the next world. Was it a sign for Aron Ralston? As the raven soared overhead Tuesday morning, Aron took his last sip of water.
God damn. It's really sinking in how dumb this is. So many things about it. So many things. It's going to be a really long time before anybody gets to me.
Now he was forced to confront the decision that had loomed for days, weighing down on him like the boulder itself. It was time to act, to try to cut himself free.
What I was working through in my head was, okay, can I actually do this? And I took the knife and I stabbed myself into the upper part of my forearm right here, and was able to sink the knife blade in, but I wouldn't ever be able to cut through the bone with this knife. Jesus, I tried cutting my arm off. I couldn't even barely break the skin with this stupid knife. I tried a couple different blades, and all I did was just mark myself up. I could barely even get any blood to draw.